Is the Nescafe Dolce Gusto Genio a Genio or not? Well, we're going to tell you today here on Aromacup.com. Hi everyone, I'm Brian with Aromacup.com. Thank you as always for joining me in my virtual coffee shop brought to you by Aromacup.com. Today I'm taking a look at the Nescafe Dolce Gusto Genio single serve coffee machine. Now that sounds like a mouthful, and it kind of is, but for such a small machine, I'll say that I think it stands up to some of the hype that I've heard about the Dolce Gusto machines. And so we're going to go into it, show you the features and how easy it is to use, and help you to make an informed decision if you decide to add one of these to your own at-home coffee shop. So let's dive in. First off, what's in the box? Pretty simple. You're going to get the Dolce Gusto Genio machine and a manual. Nothing extra inside of the machine. However, there is a notice in the manual for these machines. It says you can join Nescafe's single serve club, which will get you some free pods to use with your machine. So you might want to check that out if you add one of these to your own at-home coffee shop. The machine's very straightforward. As you can see, it's quite small, should fit real easily on most countertops. Even if you're a little bit deprived of some space, I think you'll be able to fit this pretty easily. Let's start from the bottom and move up, just as we always do, with the tray. Now the tray is removable, and this is so that you can move the tray into different locations depending on the type of cup, mug, etc. that you're going to be using. Makes it real easy to just move around and set that exactly as you want it. Moving up, you have the actual tray where your pods are going to be placed, and this is pretty easy to access. You simply move up the locking handle right here, pull that tray out. This is where your Dolce Gusto pod is actually going to go, and we'll talk about brewing in just a moment utilizing the machine. This slides right back in and locks down using that locking handle. And you're going to notice that I have this green display right here on the front face of the unit. This is pretty cool because moving to the top, I'll show this to you guys just right here. On the top I have this little scroll wheel, and as you can see, as I change that, this indicator goes up or down, and this is the volume selection. This is going to allow me to select the size of my cup. Now each Dolce Gusto pod is also going to have a small indicator on it, which is going to tell you the best setting to set your Dolce Gusto machine to in order to brew for that specific pod. In the case of this Morning Blend Grande pod that I have, it says to set this all the way to the top and essentially brew the largest cup. But it's cool because it's this real clicky kind of rubberized wheel, and I like the way it feels. It's kind of fun to use. I wish it had more usage, really. I wish that it maybe controlled something else so I could use it more, but it is pretty cool. On top of the machine, to the left and right side of that wheel, are my brew buttons. And this is, you can see there's a blue one and there's a red one. Blue, of course, is going to be for brewing a cold beverage, and red for brewing a hot beverage. And so there are iced beverage pods, Dolce Gusto pods, that you can use with these machines. So you have the option to do both. And so that's essentially the whole front and top of the machine. On the side, you have your power button, just glows green when it's time to brew. I've seen it blink red when there's not enough water in the machine. And speaking of water, if we remove the tank sits on the back. The tank is very, very small, I have to say. It's a 21-ounce water tank. I think that makes sense considering the size of the machine. It's sort of a very compact little single-serve machine, but you're probably going to be filling it up a lot, especially if you get some friends over and everyone's drinking cups of coffee. 21 ounces doesn't go far, but I won't necessarily give a mark against the machine for that because, again, it's in keeping with the overall design. It's really small, light, very easy to move around, and not going to take up a lot of space on a countertop. Let's talk about brewing some coffee using the Genio machine. Now, the Nescafe Dolce Gusto single-serve coffee machines utilize their own pod type. Much like most single-serve machines on the market today, they utilize this Dolce Gusto pod, which is different from most of the other single-serve pods we've seen. You'll notice that on the bottom of it, it's sort of beveled, and it's a little bit bigger than a Keurig K-Cup. It has a foil top on it, and the brewing mechanism is pretty much the same as what we've seen in a lot of other machines, where a needle is going to puncture the top of this pod, and start the brewing process. So I'm actually going to start brewing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the types of pods that we have access to with the Dolce Gusto machine. I'm just going to place this in the tray, lock that down. It takes a little bit of pressure because you're going to feel it actually puncture the pod. And then you want to make sure that you set your water indicator to the level that the pod shows you should use, figuring that you want to utilize the factory settings. Let's just go ahead and do that. We're going to brew hot, so I'm just going to press the hot brew right here. Machine's really quick. It starts brewing very fast, which I think is pretty awesome. If it's heated up and ready to go, you're good. Now, speaking of that, it does have a 5-minute power off feature, so if it sits not being used for 5 minutes, the machine is going to turn itself off. Now, the Dolce Gusto pods, there's a few different types. Again, the one I'm using right now is a morning blend. It's a grande mild morning blend, as the top of the pod says. I do have this Dolce Gusto variety pack right here, and this gives you an idea of some of the pods that you could come to expect from Dolce Gusto. Specifically, there's a chocochino and a cappuccino. And the chocochino and the cappuccino both are 2-pod packages, essentially. You've got your milk pod and you've got your coffee pod. So you combine the two of these, and that's how you're going to make a chocochino or a cappuccino. Now you also have just standard, in this case, Cafe Lungo, and then again, here's that morning blend that I was talking about. So you get access to espresso-based drinks along with the milk that comes with them if you don't mind utilizing powdered milk. And you also get your regular coffee drinks. And as I say, in addition, there are iced drinks and teas as well. So there's a pretty good assortment of beverages for the Dolce Gusto machines, which I think is cool. Here's my cup out of the Genio. You can see that happened pretty fast, which was great. Let's see what the temperature is. And actually we're hitting just about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have to say, that is pretty impressive. That's a pretty warm brew from such a small machine. And you can see that the coffee that I get out of the Dolce Gusto machine, it does have sort of a crema on it. This is kind of something that I see with a lot of these type of single-serve machines. There's a little bit of a crema, and as it was brewing, I had some layering going on. But really, that just looks like a pretty straightforward cup of coffee. The flavor, I've also been impressed. I've tried it with a couple different pods, and I am enjoying the coffee that I'm getting out of this Dolce Gusto machine. What are you going to pay if you want to add the Dolce Gusto Genio machine to your own at-home coffee shop? You're looking at about $129. That's the suggested retail price. Where's the best place to get it? Well, as always, check the link in the description of our video and we'll point you to the right place to find this machine. What's my bottom line with the Nescafe Dolce Gusto Genio single-serve coffee machine? I think it's a very cool little machine. I think it'd be really great for an office, especially an office that's not very high volume. So maybe just a few people in an office. It would be a very cool thing to just have and be able to, have a cup of coffee very quickly. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles. It doesn't have, like an auto-on feature, a timer, things like that. But that's really okay because, again, it's a very straightforward, small machine, really easy to add to your own at-home coffee shop, I think, and it makes a nice cup of coffee. I think the only downside that I can maybe market for is something that really everybody in the single-serve world is getting hit a little bit with right now, which is that these pods are really not going to be recyclable, so they are going to add to landfill waste. And there are no, at the making of this video, there are no options for making your own coffee with a Dolce Gusto single-serve machine. It's probably the only thing I can mark against it with, but let's face it, that is pretty much the case with most single-serve machines these days. Otherwise, very cool little machine, especially for the price. So I hope that you guys found this informative and helpful as always, but if you have questions, comments, or anything else, get in touch with us on the comments on this video or at Aromacup.com, where we will be happy to talk coffee with you guys. As always, guys, I'm Brian, coming to you from my virtual coffee shop, brought to you by Aromacup.com. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'm going to ask you to enjoy your cup, and I'll see you next time. Take care.